Okay, now, the important part. We have, for our main speaker tonight, Congressman Paul Mitchell. He's talked several times, and he's very good at it, you know. And we're going to have him talk tonight, and when we're all through, there'll be time for questions. He'll answer your questions, and we'll go from there. So let me please introduce Mr. Paul Mitchell, Congressman from 10th District. Give him a hand.
Where's my card?
I'll get it for you.
Back in the back going, where's my card? Let me take a few minutes to give you what's on your agenda as updates. I guess they call it the good, the bad, the ugly of Washington. So people have said, how's it going there? And then stop and answer questions that you may have. So let me try and start with information you don't see in the 24-hour news or social media, because it's leaving an awful lot out. If you believe what's in social media or the news, you think we're having cage matches in the back of the House and Senate, and it's really not true. Some facts I think are important. We've 177 bills have passed both the House and Senate and become law. 70% of them are bipartisan. That is, there was a Republican and Democrat sponsorship of those bills. That's the highest it's been in 20 years. Let me ask you, did anybody tell you that? Did you see that on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC? Did anybody tell you that on whatever social media you go to? No. 177 bills become law in the last 21 months, this administration. That's the highest amount in 10 years. Bills that we wanted passed, bills that passed largely starting in the House, went through the Senate. Now you can say, well, yeah, some of them are naming a post office. Lord knows we do some of those. Some matter, just vets that have died, and emergency workers that have died that name a post office after them. Most of them are meaningful. For example, the first time in 31 years, we passed meaningful tax cuts and reforms. The last time anything meaningful was done in taxes was Steve Eiserman was a captain of Red Wings. He was a rookie. I was 30 years old. Think about that. I'd done little dinking stuff with the tax code, but it had gotten to 74,000 pages. When I came and talked with you when I was running for office, one of the top things I put on my list we need to deal with is a tax code that you need to be a wizard to understand what's in it, because no one really does. We finally have gotten progress on that. Now, you'll see in social media, they say, oh, but 85% go to the other tax cuts, go to the top 1%. They're lying to you. I'm saying that because they took the last year of the tax cuts that the Democrats said they wouldn't allow them to be permanent. They had to vote in the Senate, 60 votes to make them permanent. They wouldn't allow that. So they took the last year of the 10-year period where, in fact, the individual tax cuts are not permanent, and they said, well, look, all the money goes to the rich people. Now, there's a bill in the House, I believe we'll vote on in September, to make those tax cuts permanent for everybody. We're going to pass it in the House, and frankly, defy the Senate to say they won't deal with it. We've got 177 bills in the law, despite the fact that the Senate is operating at a pace that, when I take people on a tour, I take on the House side, we go to the Speaker's balcony if we can, and I walk through the rotunda, and they walk to the other side, and people stop and they go like this. I said, yep, welcome to the Senate, where things rarely move. It's true. It'd be great if we got a Senate that actually functioned, that actually did a job. There's so much more we could do. But I don't want to leave here tonight and think that nothing's getting done in Washington or all there is bloodshed, because that's all you'll see in the 24-hour news. That's all you'll see in social media. People ask me why that is. Well, frankly, how is anybody going to watch it? Sort of like the Bachelorette, where it has to have some drama or no one's going to watch it. And that's how they get people to watch the news. It's unfortunate, because I think it's really disheartening to the American people. It's disheartening to all of us some days. Hey, I have to tell you, it's disheartening to me some days. I turn the news off. I just turn it off because it isn't accurate for what's going on in the world most days, or the biggest issues we're dealing with in Washington. You haven't noticed coverage. For example, anybody notice that right now that mid-level officials from China and the United States are meeting on trade issues to try to resolve the issues, trade, that have been haunting this country for 30 years plus? Anybody see that? If you did, you're fortunate. You did. Not something that's covered much in the news. It's critically important. These are the things that frustrate me in terms of going to Washington and coming back home, is that information isn't shared with people that really need to know things that matter to them that are going on, that make a difference in their lives. Because we spend more time talking about what some crazy Democrat or some crazy candidate for Congress is talking about and referring to Melania in terms that are not, let's put it this way, I can't repeat in public, but that's the news for the night? Really, seriously, that's it? So part of our challenge we need to do is not feed into that. Not feed into it. I work really hard not to read the Facebook comments on my official or campaign page because, frankly, it would drive you a little crazy. And the stuff you see is after the system automatically deletes out the cuss words and things like that. It does, because you don't want to see the other stuff. You think about that someone thinks they're going to have an impact on public policy or the politics of this country by referring to people in terms that you wouldn't walk down the street and say to someone. Frankly, you probably wouldn't say it to their face, but you're doing it on social media. It's destructive to this country. Please, step back from that because it's getting in the way of getting things done in a productive manner in this country. We cannot move forward simply by calling each other names. It doesn't get anything accomplished. And there are things we disagree about in Washington strenuously. I'll talk a little about some of those. But the name calling, that kind of stuff, rarely do people get that excited. Rarely. Does it happen? Yes, sometimes. I almost had to have someone removed from the floor of the House. I remember removed from the floor, calling Kevin McCarthy a racist. Came that close, that and the Sergeant of Arms. The third time he looked at me, I gavelled him down. He looked at me and knew I was in the chair. I was going to call the speaker, remove him from the floor. He left. There's some things that shouldn't happen there as well. Now, things that haven't been done that are frustrating, and they are. I was asked by the speaker to serve on what they call the debt ceiling work group. We call it the debt relief work group because we're running a national debt that's massive and it's going up. We're making progress on that, and then the Senate decided they wanted a joint select committee, whatever the heck that means. So a member and I put out a bill based on the consensus of what that committee had. I'm going to read the title because in Washington we've got long titles for some of these. The Protecting Our Children's Future Act, H.R. 5214, which would require a 2-year budget cycle and appropriations be in the same cycle. They aren't now. Do you know something like 65% of what the federal government spends is on autopilot? Such gems as the cost of feeding the Mustangs on Chincoteague Island, that's a mandatory spending item. I want you to know that. That's mandatory. Think about that. I can give you a list that just astonish you. And by virtue of that, it's automatically done. There's no vote. No one talks about it. I understand Jim Jordan's frustration. The answer to that is, another part of the bill is that almost everything is a discretionary spending item. That is, has to be voted on. The only exceptions are Medicare, Social Security, and TRICARE, health care for veterans. Everything else would have to be voted on. So we're accountable for every dollar that's spent. It included no budget, no pay. That is, if you don't pass a budget, you don't pass appropriations, members of Congress don't get paid. You know, money walks, money talks, BS walks. Guess what? You're not going to get paid until we pass a budget and appropriations. Those types of things, fundamental reforms, not unlike, frankly, when I ran business. We couldn't operate without a budget. We couldn't operate without a plan. It wasn't just a 1-year plan. You had to have that. Government has done that for far too long. They have not passed a comprehensive set of appropriations in over 10 years. So it's not simply a balanced budget amendment. It's not simply a decision to cut spending. You've got to get a process by which you tie the budget and appropriations together, do it in a 2-year period, and you make people vote on each and every part of that. That's frankly the answer, and it's another thing I campaigned on when we finish. We'll let him wave down. That's what I campaigned on. We didn't get done. There's a bill in there, a couple other versions of it that we need to continue to work on. We could talk about other things here in terms of things that we're working on, but I think those are, based on the comments we've had from before, are significant concerns. The last thing I want to talk about is, because it mattered last time I met with you folks, is that was regulatory reform. We overturned 15 regulations, major regulations in the previous administration. We went back as far as we could by law and did what was called a Congressional Review Act and overturned 15 of them. Things that were important. We reduced funding, for example, for EPA enforcement staff back to 1998 levels. Frankly, at some point in time, we have more bureaucrats than we need to have. Do we reduce other departments? You bet we do. And some of them are being reduced. Because we've got a lot of bureaucrats running around, and sometimes you wonder about what they're getting done. We reformed the Veterans Administration to allow them to deal with employees that simply weren't serving our veterans well. You all read in the newspaper about veterans that were dying, waiting for care, but the system said they'd gotten care. They were lying. They were lying to get bonuses. Think about that. I think the number is 1,000 people. 1,000 people worked in the Veterans Administration have been let go or terminated for malfeasance, for misconduct, since that went into law. We're starting to make progress on it, but it takes some time to get there because this animal, democracy doesn't turn quickly, or representative democracy doesn't turn quickly. I said because someone here asked me, well, how are we looking in the next election? The president, when he flew into Washington Township, he came out here the night of the correspondence dinner. He came here. I flew with him out and rode with him in the Beast to the event. By the way, the Beast is pretty cool. I have to tell you, it's what a massive machine. But he was saying, he said, well, can we hold the House if I'm not on the ballot? I said, well, Mr. President, you are on the ballot. Just because your name isn't there, you're
What? Hello? Hello? Hello?
And is it going to gavel? I get to frequently be in the gavel. It does, I think. I'm sorry, what was I talking about there? Help me out. Oh, the election. Your policies are on the ballot. Your ability to govern is on the ballot. The Democrats will not impeach him, I don't think, if the Democrats win the House. That's too simple. They saw what happened with Clinton. The reality is they're going to subpoena him to the cows, and he and everybody in the administration to the cows come home. They're going to bury him in paperwork like he's never seen before, and the world will come to a screeching halt in Washington. Now, we are in a better place in this country than we were 21 months ago. Unemployment's at 3.8%. By the way, tax reform, the average tax filer in this district, and I look at the IRS data when we did it, the average filer in this district will save $2,700 this year on their taxes compared to last year on the same income. $2,700 is meaningful money. That's the average filer in this district. Varies by, but that's the average. I looked at it, went through the data in great detail. They don't talk about that. Wages have gone up from over year by about 2.7%, faster than the inflation rate. Now, if you believe the people online, they'll tell you that it's all being eaten up. Not true. We can go through the economic indicators, but there is an employer in this district that I've visited as I wander across it that isn't the biggest problem they face is hiring right now, finding people to go to work. Those are the things we're working on. Let me tell you one more example of what we're struggling with in terms of getting accomplished. Have you all heard of the Farm Bill? There's two components of that. There's farm programs and support, and then there's the SNAP program. The SNAP program is probably 70% of the overall cost of the farm program. Farm Bill itself. Food stamps. The House version of the bill, you'd think we were barbarians because we say that if you don't have children under 6, if you're not over 60, and you're not disabled in some manner, you're physically able to work, the expectation is you work 20 hours a week, you go to school to learn a skill to go to work 20 hours a week, or you volunteer 20 hours a week. I know, it seems extreme, totally out of control to think that you'd want to work. The House passed that. By the way, it was totally partisan. Not a single Democrat voted in favor of that. And the Senate, their version of it, they don't want to have that in there. Debbie Stabenow is the ranking member of the Senate Agriculture Committee. She's adamant that there's no work requirement, that takes food away from people. And I tell you, when I was a kid, Dad worked on the line. We were on off food stamps, we got laid off. The expectation was, go back to work. And he did go back to work. It's not intended to be a long-term lifestyle. We're intended to support people to go back to work. And we should do that. But it should not be a situation where we've got something that says you can not choose not to work, and it's okay that we'll pay for it. This country wasn't built on that. We're not successful that way. So that's one of the big issues we'll have going back in the fall, and the farm program expires September 30. It'll be an interesting September. I go back the day after Labor Day, and we go back to the arm wrestling. So I think that's the good, the bad, and the ugly of Washington, D.C. these days. But it's not as bad as you think. It's certainly not as dysfunctional as they lead you to believe. Because if it was, I'd have a flat spot on my forehead right here from just banging on the desk. And I don't. There are just days I go, oh, God help us. So I'm happy to answer some questions. You had your hand up early. Go ahead. You want to say something?
Okay, before you do that, please speak in the microphone so we're recording this so they can hear your question.
They want to know who you are, so that when they're recording it, they'll know to find you later.
So who's first? First?
Who's first?
Somebody had.
Go back.
Paul?
Yes, sir.
We had, Representative Jordan up there talking about the balance bill, but the Republican Congress passed that omnibus spending bill,
Yep.
and it included a whole bunch of stuff that we didn't want, especially like Planned Parenthood.
Stuff I didn't want.
But still, I think you voted for it, didn't
I
you?
did, absolutely.
Yeah, can you explain why?
Sure. One thing I'll quarrel with Jim Jordan on, which is the bill was constructed from a series of other bills that had been reviewed. So I think it's disingenuous to say there's 2,000 pages that no one had looked at. It's a convenient example to have, but it's not an accurate description. And frankly, I'd appreciate it if we're going to make those criticisms, we'd be accurate about them. Second of which is the administration supported the bill on the Wednesday before the vote. You heard of a person called Mark Short? He was the president's legislative liaison, lead legislative person until he recently left. He reported to Trump. He came before our conference and said the president supported it and distributed what's called an SAP, Statement of Administrative Policy. The president wanted the budget. It was the best. They were involved in negotiations as well, the White House. It was the best they thought they could get passed given the 60-vote requirement in the Senate. It included $1.5 billion for the wall. It included full funding for defense. It included more money for border security personnel, a series of things. It included things we didn't want, absolutely. Planned Parenthood being one of them. But by the way, the administration's fixed that problem in terms of their rules. The choice was on Thursday whether to vote and support what the president wanted and the administration wanted for the budget, or vote no and shut the government down once more. To gain little, because the Senate has a 60-vote requirement. I've advocated we get rid of the 60-vote requirement. The budget bill I put in play, the bill I offered with Congressman Byrne, more senior member, the other thing it would have in it, which I didn't mention, was a requirement that all appropriations in budget would be a simple majority in the Senate as well. We need to stop being held hostage by a 60-vote rule in the Senate, but that's used against us. Let's be honest about it. We don't even have a consistent 50 votes, a majority in the Senate. First, Senator McCain's not there. There are some days we could say we're not sure of the majority if he was there. And we have several other Republicans in the Senate that we're not sure where they're going to vote any given day on things. So that's why I voted for it, because there are days, some people believe they have the perfect answer to everybody. I spent 35 years in business and rarely did I see perfect. I had a choice between vote for something the administration supported or shut the government down again and hope we're going to get something better. In the meantime, who suffers? By the way, the bureaucrats, they get paid monthly. Members of Congress get paid monthly. Their staff get paid monthly. You know who gets hosed first? The military folks, Homeland Security, Border Security, all those folks get paid every 2 weeks. Now, some would get paid because they're essential personnel. Some would not. Short term. Long term, they get it back. That doesn't help someone living on their paycheck, does it? Those are the choices some days. Not pleasant, but we have to make them. A balanced budget amendment doesn't solve the problem either. We've got to change the budget appropriations process. I have one proposal, somebody else may have another, but until we change that, we're going to keep doing this silly circus. And we're going to do it in September here, and it's going to be ugly. I don't think we'll pass an omnibus. I think we'll get budget bills done by some of the departments. But next week, the Senate's voting this week, and we go back, we'll be dealing with the Department of, the Senate's put the Department of Defense appropriations with DOL and HHS together. You know why they've done that? They hold us hostage on what they want to do with Health and Human Services, including riders on Planned Parenthood funding, a whole series of others, putting it with defense. So if you want full funding to defend our nation, we're going to hold you by the, I'm thinking polite terms, it's being taped. We're going to get you around the throat, and we're going to say, by the way, this is what we want, and this is what the Senate passed. 60-vote rule is a colossal pain in the backside. It does not protect our country, and it gives some people in the Senate far more power than they should have. They see the voters once every 6 years. I stand here in front of you at least once a year, and I'm up for re-election every 2 years. I know what you want. Convince them. And if you want to make a difference, there is somebody running for the Senate right now that is committed that he will vote to get rid of the 60-vote rule. John James. He would vote to eliminate funding for Planned Parenthood in the Senate. Ask yourself if Debbie Stabenow is going to come close to doing that. You and I both know better. Okay?
Okay, another question?
Uh-oh.
I'll take this guy here.
Kurt Hauser.
Okay, Kurt Hauser.
With endless war going on since the year 2000, how can we ever really expect to have a balanced budget? We don't know where the next global skirmish is going to break out. And the idea of the taxpayers not being on the hook for things?
War's not causing our problem. Fastest growing thing in the department right now in our budget is Medicaid.
Pardon me?
The fastest thing growing in the federal budget right now, by far and away, is Medicaid. By far and away.
I didn't say anything, but I don't get Medicaid. You know.
No, I'm not saying you do. I'm just saying that the biggest challenge we have in terms of funding our government is the mandatory spending items like Medicaid, Medicaid being number one, that spends money on autopilot, that just spends money hand over fist. And then again, the same issue there. Michigan was trying to put in place a work requirement that if you're able to work, you had to work 20 hours a week, and it was a problem. Guess what? It's terrible. I know you have. But that's what it's not. The Department of Defense budget is not the reason we can't get ourselves to a balanced budget. And part of the problem we have right now is making up for the last 10 years where we didn't fund the military.
Okay. We spoke earlier about multi-employer.
Yeah, and that's way too complex to have that conversation here. We'll talk about it. I'll call you back. But I promise you would, I will. We talked about it. Here, we're not talking about pension plans, and if you guys want to do that for fun, trust me.
Mr. Mitchell.
Sir. Scary.
My name is Robert Woods, and I have 5 questions I'd like to ask you, please.
How about we start with one, because other people have questions too.
All right.
Pick your best one.
Okay. According to the United States Constitution, the U.S. representatives in the U.S. Senate are supposed to represent the people of the United States. Is that correct?
Supposed to represent the people in the district.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Then why is it that most representatives, most senators get a lot of support as far as from special interest groups and lobbyists, and they become multimillionaires within 4 years? Can you answer that question?
Yeah, I can. I'm just trying to work through what order to put it in, so just hang with me 1 second. What's that? I can't speak for people leaving, becoming millionaires. I've been there 21 months. I was in private business for 35 years. I can tell you that when I'm done, in fact, my wife and I talked about it. I spent a week up north at the lake. When I'm done, I'm not going to go be a lobbyist. It doesn't seem like a whole lot of fun to me. I'm going to go home. So I can't speak for what some people do after they leave, because I haven't been there long enough to understand what that cycle is. Why some people get support from outside groups? Because they have the right in the Constitution to try to express themselves as well, and they do by contributing to fundraising. whether you like it or not. What's the do you know what? That's one example I know. Anybody want to guess, as of the last fundraising report, how much Debbie Stabenow had in her fundraising report, and how much John James has to raise to compete? Should have raised $1 million. If you want to compete in elections these days, if anybody thinks you're winning the election by going door to door in a congressional race or Senate race or gubernatorial race or anything like that, can't be done. You've got to raise money to do it, and you can't raise that kind of money at $100 or $25 a person.
Well, sir, I understand that. However, when it comes to the lobbyists, coming to you and say, hey, we want you to support our lobby that is going around, and we're going to give you $10,000, $15,000 here to just to kind of pat you on the back, basically, and so if you will help us out, we'll help you out.
Let's be honest about let's be clear about one thing. First, if they give,
no, I'm not done yet.
well, you got one question, and then people, if I give him, a member of Congress, and I give him $15,000 cash, it's a violation of law and ethics. You can't just give somebody money personally. You can contribute to the campaign, and there are very strict limits in terms of how much that is. So it's not that they're, you've got PACs that are giving money to campaigns, to re-elect campaigns.
Then how is it that you managed to be the 14th wealthiest U.S. senator in the United States in 4 years?
Well, first, I'm not a senator. I'm a
Oh, I'm
congressman.
sorry.
Second of which is I spent 35 years in business, ran a fair-sized company, ultimately owned 39% of the company, sold an interest in the company to a private equity group, made a fair amount of money in doing it, and then invested that money in running for Congress. I didn't make it in Congress any way, shape, or form. I had that money when I went in.
Okay, we're going to limit to one question. Okay, if you got more afterwards, Mr. Mitchell will be around for a little bit after the meeting.
Okay, let's try this guy here.
Good evening, Representative
Hi,
Mitchell.
sir.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I have a question and a proposal for a solution. It's very personal to my wife and me, and to probably most of the people in this room, and that is Social Security payments.
Okay.
Not benefits, by the way. We're bringing in, we have been for a very long time now, far less than we should. If we go back to the
Sure.
way the program was originally established, when are we going to see some real action from both houses of Congress on resolving that issue and stopping the theft of our own funds, by the way, which is what they've been doing?
And what's your proposal?
My proposal to solve that, at least in part, would be a reduction in annual salaries for every representative and senator in Congress. I think the current average is about $170,000 a year.
Members of Congress in the House receive $174,000 a year.
Yeah.
You could reduce them all to $50,000 a year. I'm not sure you get the quality anywhere near the quality you want of members, and it's not going to make a piddly of difference in the Social Security issues.
Yeah.
The Social Security program, when it was established,
Just about done.
was under the pretense that you'd use future workers to pay for the people that are retiring, assuming on some naive assumption, some basis that there would always be more people working than retired. They didn't expect, for whatever sets of reasons, naively, that there'd be more of us getting older than there are working. Fairly shortly, we'll be at a 2-to-1 ratio of people working to retired, which is not going to cover the cost.
No, it's not.
No,
Not
it's
at
not.
all. Not
The
at
other
all.
thing is the average age of someone, the average life expectancy of someone when it was first put in place is about 55. and now the average life expectancy for males is pushing 80. So the costs are much higher than they were. Until we deal with how much money we're setting aside, and we deal with, for example, you can means test Social Security, so the people that have more income get less Social Security, including getting no Social Security at some level. You've got to start making those changes. How quickly? I hate to be pessimistic tonight, but the reality is not until the pain threshold gets high enough that people deal with it, and it's not there yet. There's a variety of proposals to fix it, but getting enough people who want to tackle and vote for that, that's a whole other conversation.
All right, all right.
It wasn't.
And never paid it back?
There's. There's no.
I'm sorry, I was ready.
Well, I didn't make. I'm trying to be nice. Just because you're ready doesn't make it real. Trust me on that. What's that?
Truth ain't true.
They alleged at one point in time there was a trust fund, but the reality is they never set it aside as a trust fund, never in its existence. And you could do that, and there's still not enough money to do that. As you said, you could set it up now as in effect in a lockbox to do that, and there's still not enough money to do it. We need to make some fundamental changes in how we approach retirement income. It was intended to be a safety net so that people, as they get older, weren't left destitute, and now too many people use it as their primary source of retirement. That's had a fundamental change in their structure, and people are living longer.
Okay. Next question.
Yeah, well, we talked at length about that, and we'll continue to talk. It's a problem. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, and thanks for holding a public meeting. And
Your name, please, if you could. There.
Beth Little from Lapeer Indivisible. So President Trump has met with high-level Russian officials twice behind closed doors with no advisors, no security advisors, just him and the Russian officials. You wrote me in a letter, and with his last meeting with Putin, you had some comments on Facebook. You said that you agree that Russia is an enemy, that we can't trust Russia, and that they tampered with our election, or interfered with our elections. But you didn't call President Trump out in person. And in the letter you wrote to me, you said, I should rest assured that you're going to hold every federal official to the laws of the land, to the Constitution, basically. But you, again, did not call President Trump out by name. I see your job as you are part of the checks and balances, but I don't see you checking him. Can you comment on that?
Love to. First, I did correct what I believe was a misperception or a statement I didn't agree with, which is we have a lot of, I said that in fact Russia is an adversary, as is China, North Korea, we can go through a list, Iran, and that we should view them in no other manner but that. That doesn't mean we don't meet with them. Did you know last year in the budget that loved omnibus, here's one of the things we put in there that made a big difference. We put $380 million. Sorry. Yeah, $380 million in there to secure our elections. $380 million, of which Michigan received, I think, 14 million. Somewhere 10, 14, I can't remember the exact number to be honest with you, somewhere in that range. Largely they spent to get new election equipment and for cybersecurity of elections. Now you're not seeing that. Anybody read that in social media? Anybody read that in CNN or MSNBC or Fox? Well, then that's could have been. I'm sure you do. Thank you. So the reality is in terms of holding accountable the entire government on security, for example, our elections, which is one of the big concerns, we are. We did an investigation. I went through 2 hearings. I've been through these classified briefings on the elections. The Russians, in no manner, we can find no evidence, changed voting numbers. None. We could talk about it till the cows come home. It just didn't happen. Did they attempt to interfere with our, impact people's opinion? Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Does anybody think that's new? Anybody think that just happened this last election cycle? By the way, I will suggest that, and I won't suggest, I'll say that the previous president sent, I think it was 6 of his staff to Israel to campaign against Netanyahu. Now, in this case, he wasn't secretive about it. He sent 6 staff in someone else's election. Now, should we hold him accountable as well? They were paid staff of President Obama. He sent him over there. Now, you asked the question, I get to answer it. So I have, in my process, gone through to make sure we secure our elections. I called it what I believe was a misdescription or not an appropriate description of Russia. It is not my job or role to decide who it is that President Trump meets with. That's not the role of Congress. He can meet with anybody he wants to meet with. By the way, guess what? There's a treaty we have to approve in the Senate. It doesn't come to the House, it goes to the Senate. There isn't any treaty. And by the way, did you notice there's another set of sanctions slapped on Russia today? So at some point in time, there were another set of sanctions slapped on Russia today for trade with North Korea, I think it was. We have more sanctions on Russia at this point in time, significant sanctions, than the history of this country. But to be honest with you, people, I'm going to say it, in your group don't want to talk about that. They would rather we attack an individual because of the things you think he's done wrong or said, rather than say, wait a minute, look at all the sanctions. Now, you're entitled to your opinion. I was elected for mine. That's what I'm doing. They're active, they're enforced. You put them in force, they're still enforced, they will stay in force, the same as they are in North Korea. And we're going to take trade action against China for the first time ever.
Okay. Okay, hello. I'm Mary Jo Dahm Latimer. I've lived here for over 50 years.
Sure.
My question is about federal loans for college. My daughter took out federal loans, $40,000. Is there any program for any kind of help with the debt, either on the interest or anything other than working for a nonprofit organization for 10 years? That's the only thing she found out so far.
Well, there's also a program that allows you to, if you stay with your payments, and I think it's for 10 years. The rules have changed over time. That if you stay with your payments and you stay with the limitations, it's also forgiven at some point in time. And I've forgotten what that is, but if you give your name and number to Troy over here, we can get you the link on those repayment options. What I proposed, and it's called the College Transparency Act, was a bill to require all colleges, universities, career schools, the whole thing, to have to put out their data on their success rates. All of us, and I'm dealing with some of it now with my middle children, we send our children off to school wanting them to assist them to get a career. The problem is they're going to schools that frequently they can't get much information on the outcomes. Try to figure out what the graduation rate is for the architecture program or the nursing program at the University of Michigan or Michigan State. Not overall, not the university, those programs, because the outcomes vary significantly. Then try to figure out what the employment rate is and how much money they make and how much the real cost of going to school there is. You can't find that out. I wanted that information put out publicly, require all institutions to put it out, and to make sure every student that was interested in school there got that information and put it out on the web. You'd think I was coming up with a new radical idea because there are people going, oh my God, we can't share that with people. We can't share that with someone else is employed or not. They know that information now. That information exists in databases right now at this point. But the idea that we're going to put out a database that says in total, in numbers, not individuals, but metadata, said you got a job as a result of going to school, University of Michigan in nursing, or you being you as a group, the class or whatever, 2020, that somehow that's a terrible thing. So everyone is making decisions, your children and grandchildren, of going to school, hoping they're going to be able to get a career, and all they're going is based on hope that they heard someone else did all right. That's a crappy way to invest in education. But that's the current system. And it applies across the board, including universities, which is a major problem. Someone investing in going to a PhD program in art history and hoping they're going to get a career. How many jobs in our history do you think there are in the United States in any couple of year period of time? But they're taking out significant loans.
Okay.
John Stack.
Hi, John.
I'm glad you sit on the budget committee to oversee our deficit spending, because that's what some of my questions are going to be
Well,
about.
they set up, let me correct that. I sat on that committee, and then they created a joint committee with the Senate, and I no longer sit in the committee because there are fewer members. So I sort of started, and I got, I don't know, cut from the team. Maybe, I don't know. But that's I'm still involved, but not directly.
Okay. One of the things that you're going to go back to is the Farm Bill, and I operate a farm here in Lapeer County, and I want to kind of talk about that a little bit. I do support the president and his tariffs against China.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an effect that the Chinese came back and put a tariff on the soybeans and whatnot. And the president said he was going to give $12.5 billion to American farmers. Am I correct on that amount?
12 billion, something like that, 12 and a half, yep.
Okay.
And a variety of programs to try to offset the tariff impact short term. It's intended to be short term, but yes.
But I'm against that part of it. I'm going to tell you, because it's not fair to the rest of these people in this room to give $12.5 billion to less than 2% of the population of the United States. To me, there's another way to fix that problem. And if you're going to spend that money, you put it towards the infrastructure along the Mississippi, the Illinois, the upper Missouri, the Ohio, Illinois, to fix the locks and dams so that we, the farmers, can get our products to the Gulf or to markets at a reasonable cost, because our competitors, Brazil and Argentina, are investing large numbers of money to get their products out for the Chinese. The United States right now is on the verge of setting a record for exports of corn.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
61 million metric tons. Last time we did that was in 1978. With the soybeans, I'm going to get to some information. What the Chinese didn't take, Egypt, Pakistan, and Mexico bought it up. So when you go back, when Mr. Perdue is going to address this issue after the Labor Day, what is your feelings on that, $12.5 billion?
We don't, I hate to put it this way, we don't get to make that decision. I say that because there's money appropriated to agriculture in a variety of programs. These usually support programs that are different components of that to make that decision. We could theoretically attempt to take the money out of there in appropriations, theoretically. But if it's already obligated for this fiscal year, we can't even get to that. To answer you, I don't mean to duck it, but we really can't impact it. I think the bigger issue is getting the tariffs issue resolved with, and here's kind of the order it's going to happen, in my opinion. I spent about 45 minutes talking to Ambassador Lighthizer, the trade negotiator, a week ago Friday, about this issue, because it's a significant concern, not just for agriculture, for manufacturers in our community. Automobile, a variety of folks are getting hit by this. They believe that within a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, you're getting an agreement with Mexico. At that point in time, we believe that with Canada will come along. There are two big issues with Canada. Won't surprise you being from agriculture. One is what's called Class 7 milk, dry milk. Canada limits their production. They do a variety of price supports over there. They do some interesting things. They really do impact their market and undercut our prices. And softwood. Canada has been reluctant to resolve the issue, but it appears based on feedback that they're going to get those resolved. Those are the last two issues, really, that are there. Otherwise, I think they're going to resolve. So we'll get some updated version of NAFTA or some version of that done. The EU is, as you saw, the president of the EU came over, and they're talking about going to a zero for zero tariffs situation, and they put all tariffs on hold. The reality is, you've got a couple problems with that. France thinks they have all these specialty agriculture products, all their special cheeses and wines, and France has got all their little cute stuff, and they're really being difficult to negotiate. Otherwise, the EU would be a problem in ag. That and cars. And we're not likely to get rid of our tariff on trucks coming out of the overseas. We have a 25% tariff on foreign trucks. And that's not likely to change because the automakers and all the people that work at the auto companies building trucks will go nuts if you try to change that. nuts is a polite word for that. So they're not likely to change that dramatically, which means we'll have to deal with something with the EU in terms of what they want to do to balance that off, being very blunt with you. China, as I said, they just came back to sit down for negotiations mid-level to solve the problem. Why? Because China's economy is cratering. They're in a huge debt situation. It makes American debt look like a picnic. They put themselves in deep debt, spent money hand over fist, and they suddenly realized that it's not likely to change. So do I think the solution in China may come sooner than we thought, but it won't be in the next couple of weeks. It'll be over the next few months, maybe 6 months. We come to some resolution with China. Will it be perfect? No. Be better than it's been. You have to remember, we're dealing with 30 years at least. Multiple administrations with China said, well, okay, guys, we'll be nice and do what you got to do. So it's not only been unfair trade, it's been stealing intellectual property, forcing transfer of technology, basically taking us and a variety of other countries that are cleaners and using it against us. We've got a problem with it. So that's the short-term answer, or maybe longer answer than you wanted, to dealing with the issue. It's not the $12.5 billion. It's getting trade situation is fair. Because I'll hear, and there may be people who want to talk about free trade. It doesn't. I went to school in economics and public policy, guys. The free trade doesn't exist in the world anymore. Every country's got some little gig they've got to support their trade some way. Doesn't exist.
One comment about our Chinese intellectual trade. There is 300,000 Chinese students studying in our universities today, working in our laboratories, our land-grant universities, research facilities, and when their visas are up, they go back to China with their studies.
And I can't remember the bill number. I apologize to.
That started with President Carter.
Oh, it's a long time ago. It's gone for a long time. I can't tell you the exact number. I can tell you that there's some. I've forgotten the name of the bill. I apologize. There's a lot of them, frankly. That we were dealing with an education that dealt with limiting access to foreign students of countries that were effectively adversaries or unfair trade, and limiting access for technology and those types of things in American universities. I can't tell you it's going to pass soon. It's sitting there, and I don't know what's going to happen with it. It addresses at least part of that problem. I think it's a significant problem, especially where you're dealing with sensitive technology, real significant problem, and we need to deal with it. They haven't yet, but I agree with you. I just don't know what level. I don't know how many are here, but you're not going to deal with all 300,000. But where you've got real sensitive technology, we need to not have that compromised, and it can be.
Okay. Okay, this guy here.
Doesn't President Trump have to okay the sanctions against Russia? Doesn't he have to give the okay?
Yes, he has. A whole series of them, including additional ones today. Yes, those are all done through the Treasury Department, sanctions on foreign countries for specific reasons, going to be specific terms. Yes, we do, both in terms of...
Stupid people blaming Trump for being
with
Russia when he's got more sanctions and he's approved more sanctions on Russia than any other president of the United States. Are people that stupid in the United States?
Let me stop you. Here's, let me stop you. And I appreciate your comment, but hold on. Wait, guys, wait, listen. We disagree. They're here. They have an opinion. They're entitled to it. I will encourage you. I don't want to be called stupid. I don't want to call anybody else stupid. We disagree. I fundamentally disagree with a number of the positions the individual takes. But the reality is they're entitled to them because this is America, as insane as some may be. And I'm not saying they are, but people have all kinds of insane conversations. They're entitled to them. Well, just don't call them names.
I put signs up for other Republicans all over the state in Pontiac. I got beat on, but I beat them up. But they were attacking me every day for putting those signs up.
Well,
they taken my civil rights away from me, but they don't want us to take theirs away from them.
I signed, the freshman class in Congress, Republicans and Democrats, signed what's called the Civility Pledge. To conduct ourselves in a manner that is civil. And civility is defined not by being civil when you're friends with somebody. It's when you disagree with them.
Oh, yeah.
Civility is defined by, I have got good friends who are Democrats on the other side of the aisle. We disagree on a whole long list of things. I wouldn't call them names. Do I think their policies are wrong? Yeah. Do I think their politics are wrong? Yeah. Do they believe they're representing the people that elected them? Yes, they do. And that's what this country is. And a good friend of mine, a friend of mine, is from Louisiana, from New Orleans. Cedric's a good guy. Do I think Cedric, he's the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. Do you think I agree on policy and a whole series of things with Cedric? No, not at all. Would I sit down and have a glass of wine with him? Yeah, I'll have the conversation. We're straight up people. And I wouldn't call him a name. That's what we need to have in this country if we're ever going to get anything accomplished, is be willing to have those disagreements and be civil about them.
Okay.
And my response, one last part, and my response to the ladies that had the courage to come here from Indivisible, knowing that they're not coming to a friendly place, they can come. If they disagree with me, they can replace me. I don't think you're going to win the vote, but go for it. That's what democracy is. It's cool. Well, let me stop you. Do you not think that this gentleman suggesting that somehow I became the 15th richest person in Congress because I went to Congress didn't make me unhappy? Did I call him names? Did it cross my mind to say you're an ill-informed? No, sure it did. Well, it got it off the internet. That tells you a whole lot. The reality is, but it doesn't do any good to any relationship we have in this place for me to say that to him. Sorry.
That's the trouble with Republicans. They don't realize we're...
Okay, we're moving on to the next one. This gentleman here.
Okay, we're going to move on. Good, last one.
Hi, Dan
Is
Sell.
this going to be as good?
Dan Sell.
Okay.
I want to go back to Social Security.
You only get one.
I know, I got a whole list of them, but I'll talk to you afterwards.
Oh, God. I got to go home sometime. Go ahead.
Yeah, all right. Maybe tomorrow I'll let you. Social Security. They started taking money out in World War II. That was FDR. That money was never replaced into, quote, fund. But then they come up here the last few years when we have a lot less people working in relationship to people retired because of the extended lifespan of people.
Sure.
They've not done anything to address that. I agree. But why don't they won't put the money back. We took in $10 trillion. We got to spend $11 trillion. We got a shortfall. No, you got billions or trillions of dollars in that fund. But I listen to the left constantly, the progressives, as they want to be called. They want to add illegals into receiving benefits.
They're
They've
progressing
never paid
somewhere.
into
Now, give them credit. They are progressing somewhere. We're not sure where, but we let them progress.
But they want to add people. They've added Medicare. They want to add, the progressives want to add everybody that's in this country. They want to even allow the illegals to access Medicare. They want to put them on the Medicare thing. You listen to them jumping up and down all the time, wanting to add everybody to it. But Social Security is going broke, but they keep adding people to it constantly that never paid into it.
Okay, how many people here are collecting Social Security right now? By the way, I'm not at that age yet. I'll get there in the near future. I'm not there yet. But, you know, it did, I'm sorry, a sideline. It did offend the crap out of me the first time I got a note from the AARP. I was like, that, and I went with my 8-year-old to McDonald's. We ordered a meal, and we got the meal, and it was like some funny number. I looked, and she said, well, I did give you the senior coffee. I went, oh, man. Then she says, nice girl. She says, nice woman. She says, well, you have a nice day with your grandson. I went, it's my son. But the answer to your question is, don't stop worrying so much about what some other group says. And let me finish before you decide to jump on my tail. And ask right now, at least, and if you seriously think I'm going to add illegal aliens to our Social Security pool, then you think I've got Alzheimer's and lost my mind, okay? No, I am not. The reality, let me finish. Put your hand down. Put your hand down. You've had a question already. You may get in again just for fun. But no. So Social Security was never set up to set the money aside. It's a lot like the lottery going to education in Michigan. They lied to you. There was nothing done to put all that money in education. No, they sold it that way. Back when they set up Social Security, yeah, we're setting some money aside, there'll be plenty of money. The reality is it doesn't matter what you call it. There's not enough money in contributions coming in long term in the future to pay benefits going out. It's not the case now. It becomes more of an issue statistically maybe by 2030 or so. Somewhere, maybe it's 20 years out. It depends on a variety of things. How many people are working, a whole lot of adjustments in there. We're going to have to find a way to pay for it. No one in this room is getting your Social Security benefits reduced. There's been no conversation about that whatsoever. Someone posted on Facebook recently, on my Facebook site, oh, well, in January, you're going to have a vote to cut Social Security by $85 billion. Two facts, and facts matter. First, January 1st, you have a new session of Congress. You have to have all new bills. You don't just take stuff from this year and say we're going to vote on them next year. You can't schedule anything for the floor in January. It starts out all anew. So there's no way on God's green earth you could have a vote scheduled to cut $85 billion in some secret deal in January. It just can't happen. Second, there is no bill to do that. So, again, get off social media. What do you care? The question is, what do you think realistic is going to happen given the people you put in office at the federal level and state level? What do they tell you they're voting for? How do they tell you they're thinking about the problem? Why do they? This gentleman back there asked me why I voted for the omnibus. I gave him a direct answer. Is it perfect? No. The omnibus but that was the best option we had on the plate. So no, Social Security is not going bankrupt today. It's not going bankrupt tomorrow. It's not going bankrupt next year. Your benefits aren't being lost. We're not voting to cut $85 billion out of Social Security sometime in January on the sly in the middle of the night and surprise you all. If you believe that stuff, I've got bottom land in Florida to sell you. So I suggest that worrying less would save you a lot of wear and tear. Really.
You keep asking, but, well, the money coming in today is not enough to cover.
No.
But where has all that money, all the money that's been taken out over all the years, never been accounted for?
Like all the money that's in our taxes. It's been spent a lot of ways. For the first time ever, this year we're supposed to get a full audit of the Department of Defense. The first time ever. Our government is fully capable of spending money a whole lot of ways. And it's absolutely why I wanted to have the bill that I put forth with Congressman Byrne to have zero-based budgeting, go back to zero, require every department to justify their budget, and do it on a rotating every other budget cycle. To require them to justify every dollar they spent rather than say, well, we spent X last year, so we're going to spend X plus 5% this year, or 6%. Then you give them 3%, they say they took a budget cut. No, you got less than you asked for. But they took a budget cut. So they spent it. They spent all of it. And then they spent money they didn't have. And that's why we're $22 trillion in change in debt. And there's only one way to fix that, which is to fix the process, because we can talk about doing whatever. Until you fix the process, they're going to continue tying one appropriations bill to another in order to force votes to get things funded that you and I wouldn't fund because they want to fund it. And if you don't want to fund that, you don't fund Department of Homeland Security, or you don't fund the Department of Defense, and what paying threshold do you want to have? Best thing we can do in the world, in my opinion, is get rid of the 60-vote rule and deal with the reality.
Congressman Mitchell, thank you very much for coming tonight. I did have one quick thing. We've been.
She wanted the last question back there.
Well, no. This is I had this one earlier.
I don't know what it is, but I'm sure it'll be interesting.
Well, being that we are in such a divided country, elections are being decided by razor margins. We've got kind of an issue. Well, some of us think that there's a little bit of an issue with the social media, Facebook, Twitter. Sure. You've got the big tech imposing rules and removing, users ad hoc. And you got Twitter and Facebook where you can actually buy friends, you can buy contacts.
Can you do that?
Is the Congress at any point, or what discussion is there to make sure that, I don't have a problem with people posting their views, but when I look at your website, your Facebook account sometimes, and see some of the way that some of the language, even cleaned up how people have described this stuff, And then others, for just having a particular viewpoint, seem to get censored. Again, we mentioned to you earlier about the congressional candidate that she's Cambodian, and she had her page taken down for a week.
There's a good op-ed in the Detroit News today that Kevin McCarthy, the majority leader of the House, I know Kevin well, he wrote that I suggest you all read. And I say that because he gets to that exact issue. Well, he talks, we don't want the government setting up rules in the sense of, because then you got government control of the First Amendment. I mean, the newspapers are entitled to print whatever dog doo-doo they want to print. Sometimes there's dog doo-doo, and cleaning that up as well. Never mind, whether you agree or not, they're entitled to do that in the First Amendment. People are entitled to say what they want to say in social media within the parameters you set up as a user. Now, in our page, we don't allow profanity and some of the attacks, so those automatically go down. What the op-ed talks about is transparency. That is that if Twitter or whatever, if they're going to limit access or do something, they'd be transparent about it and why they're doing it. Then you can decide whether or not you're getting any version of it that has any accuracy or validity. So I think insisting on some level of transparency in terms of social media platforms matters. And you're right, it does happen. I've had it happen on mine. I've had it happen. And we have the ability to interact directly with Facebook on issues. Facebook, believe it or not, actually has a D.C. office. We can call and say, okay, dude, someone's hacked their site. That had happened once. You don't have that option. We need to have the option that there's transparency so you understand what the social media sites are doing. Because they are. Twitter's at least admitted they're doing it. Now what they're going to do about it long term is a question. Others are doing it. But it also happens on across the spectrum. I want it to be, let's be clear about it. You've got far conservative sites that are being every bit as manipulative of the social media as some of the left-wing sites. They really are. And it's easy. I could be as critical of them just for fun and sport because it's fun in terms of the progressive sites. But there are some of the right-wing sites I read that and go,
No, absolutely. I totally agree with you. But my question is, if you're going to remove one, if you've got a set of rules, if you remove one group's a viewpoint, you pull their sites down or you pull their pages down, but you selectively don't get another.
I think if we're required to clarify what the rules are and then put notifications up they've done X, then you've achieved it. If they want to have a social media platform that says we're going to get rid of all of you crazy wing bats on the right-hand side of things, if you have Tea Party in your name, no, you're out of here, you're weird, then okay, they can do that. They can. It's legal. In my opinion, they should be honest about it. That is the First Amendment, and we should not rewrite the Constitution for fun and sport because we're offended any given day. Are done? Do you have a short question or not? No, then you don't get the, no, you already had your one. Oh, go ahead, what the heck. Immigration.
You want to fund Social Security, you have a ton of people who want to come into the country, you know they're hard workers, employers who don't want to pay the wages that we want. They love these low-wage, hard-working immigrant people. My parents were immigrants. My parents did not have they came from Canada. They're naturalized citizens. They did not have the barriers.
Okay, let's talk about immigration before we go on. If you want a soapbox, you have to actually run. So let me give you the short answer on immigration. You're entitled to your question, but if you want to run. It's all kinds of fun, by the way. This is my fourth event today. This is the last question. It could be the
question.
Third. Immigration. I supported a bill that would have addressed what has been a 30-year problem ever since Reagan agreed to the last immigration reform, where there was basically amnesty given to all the illegal immigrants in the country, and we're going to deal with border security. We did A, we didn't do B. We did nothing about it. Zero. Nada. Reagan got hosed on that one. We either solve our problem with illegal entry into the country, or we're going to continue to have the current sets of problems. But your group, among others, the idea of building any physical barrier along the southern border is like a heinous thing to do. Let me finish. You got your question. I get to answer the question. We don't have a debate. You don't have a debate, run for office. If you don't secure our border, you don't have a country. It isn't just a wall. Part of it's a wall. Part of it's other border security. If you don't secure our country, you don't have a country. We cannot give citizenship to people that brought their children here illegally and make them citizens. What does that do? It creates an incentive that if you can sneak in the country, stay here long enough, we'll make you a citizen. Yahoo! It's the worst possible incentive. I said it when I was here several years ago. I'll say it again. I will not vote to give someone that came here illegally citizenship in this country. Not going to happen. Second, we're going to secure our borders. We're going to secure our borders. We're going to secure our borders, and we're going to have merit-based immigration. Merit-based. Merit-based immigration. We're not going to do this today. This is the third last question, and we can add those. That is my standard in terms of immigration. I voted for, and we're going to have E-Verify. That way, if you come in the country, you're going to have to prove you belong here. That solves a big part of our illegal immigration problem. And it is a problem. Now, the president was here and made a very clear distinction. Guest workers are not illegal immigrants. And we create this whole thing that anybody that's in the country is an illegal immigrant. They're not. Some of our biggest offenders of immigration status in this country are people that come in by plane, they overstay their visas, and they stay here, which includes some of those 300,000 that go to school and the Chinese, and they stay here. They overstay their visas. They come as tourists. They overstay their visas, hoping not to get caught. We've got to solve those problems. We never have. We're supposed to. And until we do, we're going to continue to have the same problem we have. And I'm going to stop because you want to do something else. I appreciate you everyone taking time. I appreciate the questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you. All right. What a tough group. Hey, listen, Mr. Mitchell will be around for a few more minutes later. I am sorry that we couldn't answer all your questions, but Mr. Mitchell talked for 50 minutes, or close to that, and he answered a lot of your questions. So he'll be around. We got a few more things to do here. Right now we're having the 50-50 drawing, so we'll...
Get your tickets out.
If you got tickets, get them out.